awareness on the proper kind of selfishness. The first thing I want you to understand, if you really want to wake up, is that you don't want to wake up. The first step to waking up is to be honest enough to admit to yourself that you don't like it. You don't want to be happy. Want a little test? Let's try it. It will take you exactly 1 minute. You could close your eyes while you're doing it, or you could keep them open. It doesn't really matter. Think of someone you love very much, someone you're close to, someone who is precious to you, and say to that person in your mind, I'd rather have happiness than have you. See what happens. I'd rather be happy than have you. If I had a choice, no question about it, I'd choose happiness. How many of you felt selfish when you said this? Many, it seems. See how we've been brainwashed. See how we've been brainwashed into thinking, how could I be so selfish? But look at who's being selfish. Imagine someone saying to you, how could you be so selfish that you'd choose happiness over me? Would you not feel like responding, pardon me, but how could you be so selfish that you would demand I choose you above my own happiness? A woman once told me that when she was a child, her Jesuit cousin gave a retreat in the Jesuit church in Milwaukee. He opened each conference with the words, the test of love is sacrifice, and the gauge of love is unselfishness. That's marvelous. I asked her, would you want me to love you at the cost of my happiness? Yes, she answered. Isn't that delightful? Wouldn't that be wonderful? She would love me at the cost of her happiness, and I would love her at the cost of my happiness. And so you've got two unhappy people. But long live love! Well, there you have it. What's this all about? Sometimes you get in relationships with people and it's like they want you to be miserable. Or they're constantly testing you. Or, you come home and all of a sudden they're upset. And what's wrong? Oh, never mind. Or you're expected to read their mind. It's like if you're happy, they find it threatening. So if you step back and say, well, I'd probably be happier by myself. But if you break up with the person, it'd be like, how terrible. But what are you supposed to do? Stay in a unhappy relationship where the person is miserable because you love them? Or why can't you just meet somebody who is happy when you're happy? I don't understand it myself. I've been in relationships, everything is great, and then all of a sudden there's drama. And it's just like people get bored and they start causing drama. It seems like people have this idea that they have to be constantly entertained and constantly happy. Happiness is only a small part of life. There's never been a time where people are just happy all the time. If you're drugged or if you have some mental problem where you're constantly happy all the time, that's actually quite weird, you know. But it seems that people in relationships are so worried about getting into a pattern and thinking they're bored or being bored is such a terrible thing in their mind. We live in a culture where we're constantly stimulated by all kinds of stuff on these phones and computers, and we never have time to be alone and silence and reflect or meditate, time by ourselves, quiet, out in nature. It's like we're constantly distracted by nonsense, stimulation. We're overstimulated continually. And then you get in a relationship and it's like, I'm used to a much higher level of stimulation. I'm not getting this type of stimulation, so something must be wrong. Well, obviously, that's a big problem. Nothing is wrong. It's fine being bored. It's fine being in a nice pattern. There's nothing wrong with that. And people aren't there just to entertain you all the time. You have to learn to be happy by yourself. Solitude. Solitude is very different from loneliness. Once in a while, yeah, if you're experiencing too much solitude, it could be quite lonely, but you need to be able to entertain yourself. It's not somebody's job to keep you entertained. It's not somebody's job to constantly solve your problems, do things for you, entertain you. And if you're bored, that's not something you should panic about and say, oh, this relationship is probably no good because I'm bored all of a sudden. You know, this is life. You should want to share your life with someone and you should want that person to be happy. You should, if that person's happy, you shouldn't feel threatened by that. And if that person's miserable, you shouldn't be happy by that. Schadenfreude. Schadenfreude is the happiness you get when somebody else is miserable. And that's really terrible. But sometimes it's natural to experience that. But it's nothing to be proud of. Delight when your enemies are going through a tough time. But if you find that your people you're supposed to love in your life, whether it's family members or friends or someone you're in a relationship with, and you're secretly experiencing some sort of joy at their misfortune, well, that seems to be a real problem. Anyway, you should never sacrifice your happiness for so-called love. You don't want to be in a loving type relationship where you're walking on eggshells, where you're uncomfortable, where you're afraid to be yourself or to be happy because you're going to make somebody else miserable when they see you do that. If you're in a relationship with somebody, you got to realize nobody's perfect. You're not going to like everything about the other person. You're not going to love everything about the other person. And they're not going to like everything about you, and they're not going to love everything about you. But that doesn't mean there's anything wrong with the relationship. That's normal. Your best friend, there's things about that person that you're not going to like and that you're not going to love. And if you don't see that now, it's probably because you're seeing this person through rose-colored glasses and you're ignoring red flags. You're filtering them out. Your reticular activating system in your brain is filtering out that information. You're consciously or unconsciously avoiding red flags. It's the same when you're in a new relationship. Everything seems wonderful. But familiarity breeds contempt. The more you learn about the person, the more you're going to see clearly the good points and the bad points. But you're going to have to focus on the good points, and you're going to have to forgive a lot of bad points because, believe it or not, there's no soulmate out there for you. There's nobody perfect. There's nobody who's not going to have what you would consider a character flaw in them. things you don't like. Well, that's natural. You're never going to meet somebody who everything about them you're going to love. Very, very rare if that's the case. And if that is the case, you're probably deluded. You're probably not seeing things clearly. Your mental image of this person is probably off. And that's quite dangerous because sooner or later they're going to show you something about their personality that you're not going to like. And then you're going to feel that they lied to you or they hid their real character flaws. Well, they may have, or maybe you just didn't notice. Anyway, shouldn't be so hard on yourself first and foremost, and you shouldn't be so hard on other people. We're all trying to get through this life. We're all doing what we can. Some of us are trying harder than others, but it is what it is. You know, it's difficult to keep your house in order. It's difficult to keep your mind educated, your body in shape. It's difficult. We all have bad habits, and best way to not have a bad habit is to avoid bad habits rather than try to break bad habits. Very difficult. And you know, people have deal breakers that you have different deal breakers for them. They have different deal breakers from you, you know. But maybe we should just realize that we all have feet of clay. We're all flawed to a degree. And, you know, maybe we shouldn't be so hard on one another. Anyway, the best thing to do is to tend your own garden, whether that's the walled garden of your skull, weeding your mind, same with your body. And work on yourself and hope for the best. Anyway, if you have anything you'd like to add, comment down below, please. Till next time, who loves you, baby? This guy. Bye.